An announcement this week from top universities that offer programs in the video game industry. A consortium of 20 schools announced the creation of the Higher Education Video Game Alliance, and Rochester Institute of Technology is one of them. Andy Phelps is a professor and founder of RIT School of Interactive Games and Media and the director of RIT Center for Media Arts, Games, Interaction, and Creativity, also known as MAGIC. And for some people, maybe video games are sort of like magic. Where is the industry going at this point, and how does education fit into that?
So it's a really interesting time right now in the games industry because it's starting to evolve from sort of what we would recognize as traditional AAA games, so your Halos or Call of Duty, that kind of thing. And those are still doing very well, but now we're expanding into mobile markets, into handheld markets, into different play experiences that are geared not necessarily just around hardcore gamers, but also casual gamers and different markets of that kind. So we're seeing a rise of smaller studios, of mixed studios where people are doing games that tie into other media forms, that kind of thing. So it's continuing to expand, but it's also kind of tumultuous right now.
Right. So this alliance, top educators, including Stanford, Dartmouth, RIT, what do you hope to accomplish through the alliance?
So the alliance is coming at a really interesting time. We're increasingly looking at what do we really know about video games? How can we really get to some depth of understanding about the way that these things impact our culture, and in particular the role that video games can play in a variety of other fields. So you think about games having impact on things like education or healthcare or other fields just beyond kind of only entertainment, while still using entertainment as a vehicle to do new and interesting kinds of work.
Okay, and so the alliance will involve a collaboration of schools, or you'll better define what those educational goals are?
Yeah, so right away we're looking at ways that we can collaborate more effectively on research, work together to try to establish some goals around policy or best practices. Right now there's all these schools, we have wonderful programs, but we have a lot to learn from each other in terms of what the best ways to do this are, how to tease out new understandings about games. So there's a lot of work to be done, both in terms of learning from each other and then banding together to go and garner resources to get some additional research on the slate.
Okay. To put this in perspective with popular culture, as you mentioned earlier, people are very familiar with the games people rent from the video store or play online. If you had to liken this industry to the way the television industry has grown, where would you put video gaming on the sort of television evolution continuum?
Right, so I think probably film would be a great analogy for people to understand this, right? So
okay.
We saw the early rise of Hollywood, right? And people were familiar with, large pictures that were made out of, a Sony Studios or Paramount or something like that. And then you saw this sort of second tier rise of indie film. You started to see things like Sundance and all of this other kind of stuff. You started to see home movies. You started to see sort of quasi-professional markets where people were doing student films or amateur films. You saw the rise of sort of YouTube and people being able to self-publish some of their own stuff. You see now funding through things like Kickstarter, where there's a whole range of film being produced that's not just Hollywood blockbuster film. It's somebody with a video camera all the way through that and everything in between. And so that's kind of what's happening to games now, right? We're still doing big budget, large team development, blockbuster games, but now we're seeing all of the other stuff fill in as well, right? And so that's becoming a much richer ecosystem to look at the different kinds of games that can be made, the different kinds of ways that people want to play. So there's lots of rich possibilities there.
Okay, and lastly, when you talk about games in education, games in healthcare, there may have to be some kind of government oversight of something like that. Will you have to, will part of the Alliance job be advocating for programs, new uses for video games on a government level?
Absolutely. You know, one of our key goals, and actually part of the impetus to create the Alliance, came out of Constance's work. She's another member of the executive committee, and she was formerly assigned to the Office of Science and Technology Policy at the White House. So we've been looking at that. We've been looking at the kinds of things that the government is currently funding, and we think that there's probably a role for this alliance to play in working with the government to think more around the kinds of things that we should be funding, the kinds of impacts that we want to see happen, and the kinds of understandings and the kinds of research that we're going to need in order to get there, right? And so it's one of the reasons that we're after this is it's not just one school or one program looking at this, but through collaboration and kind of garnering the strengths of all of these different places, can we come together on what the best practice is, and then work with policymakers directly to try to move the field forward.
All right, Andy Phelps from RIT, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, and for anyone who'd like to learn more about this, you can go to our website, TimeWarnerCableNews.com, TWCnews.com, and we'll have links to RIT's program and also the Alliance.